Welcome to the Found Her podcast. I'm Kelsey.
And I'm Shannon.
And we are the filmmaker, photographer, and co-founders of Found Her Productions. Together, we capture the essence of women so they can communicate their truth with confidence and ease.
Through working with our clients, we've learned that each of their stories are so unique and, to our surprise, mostly nonlinear. We believe these stories deserve to be heard to inspire women along their own journey to finding themselves and creating the life that they truly desire.
This podcast is where badass, trailblazing boss ladies will expose the ups, the downs, and everything else involved in creating their own path in work and in life.
So sit back, get comfy, and get ready to be inspired.
Welcome back to the Found Her podcast. I'm Kelsey, and I'm here with my business spouse, Shannon. We are the co-founders of Found Her Productions, and we're your hosts of this podcast. And we are back today with another fabulous guest. Allow us to welcome Kara McIntosh. Kara is a contemporary artist. Her medium of choice is primarily painting and rug hooking, and sometimes both of those things at the same time in one piece, which is amazing. Kara's work is very much inspired by landscape and nature with a conceptual twist. Her studio is based out of Collingwood, Ontario, and she also spends a great deal of time in Point of Barrel on Georgian Bay at her family cottage, where she gathers a lot of inspiration from her work. And we were so fortunate to work with Kara last year and visit her at both her studio and her cottage and observe her in action. Shannon, why don't you tell us a little bit about our experience working with Kara and what we learned about her?
So we've known Kara for a little while now, and from observing her journey and working with her, we've learned that Kara is fully immersed in a self-curated world of love, color, and possibility. Kara's sense of adventure, playfulness, and innovation comes through in her whimsical abstract landscapes. She has mastered illustrating her unique vision, whether it be through painting, rug hooking, or any other medium she chooses. We see Kara as someone who paints the world with the colors that feel true to her, and as someone who generously invites others to experience her perspective through her work. Hey, Kara, how you doing? Thanks for being here with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me, you guys. What a lovely introduction. That was really nice.
Oh, well, you're welcome.
You're so welcome. We thought we could kick things off today by starting off with something we call the brag spotlight, which we get our guests to do because we really want to see it become a lot more normal and common for women to celebrate their wins. And we think that when women do that, they're shining their own light. And in doing so, they're giving permission to the rest of us to shine our lights too.
I love that. That's such a great sentiment. I would say that what I would like to share in my brag spotlight is over the last few years, and in particular the last year, I would say, even despite pandemic and COVID and being stuck at home, I have really been able to go deep inside and figure out who I am, how I want to spend my time, who I want to spend my time with. And I've been fortunate enough to find a way to figure out my sort of what I guess I would call purpose or meaning in life. And it's taken me a long circuitous route to get here. Before I started making art on a full-time basis, I was pretty much a stay-at-home mom. We've got 3 kids, but about 5-6 years ago, I started painting and making art on a slightly more consistent basis than not doing it at all. And as I started to show my work and gain some momentum and some confidence and a little less anxiety around it all, and figuring out how to get rid of the sort of poserism, as I call it, feeling like a poser, feeling like I wasn't a real artist. I feel I've really been able to come into my own, whatever that means. And I don't think that's a stopping point. It's really the beginning point for me. And so I feel very proud of the work I've done, inside myself, but also as a painter and as a maker. And the community with which I've surrounded myself has been incredible and supportive. And that to me is a huge win, because before I started being a maker and having a regular creative practice, I wasn't unhappy in my life. I was perfectly happy in my life. You know, I was at home with my kids, and I was so fortunate and grateful to be able to do that. But there was always a little something in the back of my mind or my heart or my soul or something that told me that there was something else coming down the pipe. And I just feel so grateful and fortunate that I've found it, and that I get to continue to explore it. So that's my win.
That's huge.
That
I know,
is
it
a
feels
win.
like a big win. It's like, hallelujah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Do you feel comfortable expanding on the purpose part of that? Like telling us a little bit more about that?
Yes.
It sort of depends on the day how I would expand upon that. But I feel like Shannon, in the intro to the brag, you talked about women in particular being able to shine their lights and give permission to other women to be able to do that. And I'm a big believer in modeling and sort of, you know, there's that famous Gandhi quote, "Be the change in the world you want to see." So I do feel like if I can figure out a way for me to do what I want to do and to give back to the community at large, then that models the ability for anyone to be. If I can do it, anyone can do it. So you know, that is coming from a place of good fortune and privilege for sure. But I do believe that, you know, when any of us lifts themselves up, we lift all of us up. And I've certainly been inspired by other women and men who have found their kind of calling or meaning or their passion, call it what you want, later in life. And that certainly has inspired me to go for it and to have a little bit of confidence around it out of the gate, even though it can be extremely terrifying many times, over and over and over again.
Oh my gosh.
I love that so much. I feel like it's such a good reminder that we're really getting into it right off the hop here. I love this.
I love it. No time for small talk on film
no,
production.
We're not talking about the weather.
No, even though it's beautiful today.
It is a beautiful day.
Oh, now I lost my thought. I was going to say, no, it's okay. I was going to say that that's a really great reminder. Like when you start to like get to a point where you're feeling success or like accomplishment, sometimes that can come along with feelings of like guilt or like fear of accomplishing too much because you don't want to like seem like this big success because you don't want to make other people feel bad or you don't want to be too greedy or, you know, things like that. And when you look at it with the lens that you just described, which is like the more I accomplish things and experience success, the more I can help others or inspire others or help like show them or lead the way to show them that they can have this too. And you never know who you're inspiring when you're putting yourself out there like that. So it's a really great reminder, I think, especially for women, just because we tend to want to be helpers a lot, not to generalize, but and it's a great way of looking at it as like you're helping people by allowing yourself to experience these accomplishments.
That perspective.
Yeah, and you know, it's all part of a giant kind of community and collective experience and a continuum. Like, you know, I'm not the first woman who's really started to take her career as an artist seriously in her early 50s. There were many before me, many after me, and I'm just part of the flow and the cycle. And I feel so fortunate to be part of that. And, you know, we take inspiration from other people and we inspire other people. It's just, you know, there's nothing any of us can do to stop that. So if we're going to be part of that collective experience, then we might as well be doing something we love and are passionate about.
Totally.
Yeah, and show people what's possible in the process. Love it.
Yeah.
Something that you mentioned that stood out to me was that you were already happy before discovering your purpose later in life. And I'm just curious, like, how has life changed since discovering your purpose?
That's a really good question. My life feels much more, I don't know how to describe it, but it's more fulfilling in a way. Not that raising kids and being there for them and, you know, running a household and all that wasn't fulfilling. It was just different. Like it felt like in that way I was contributing to, you know, to a household and a family. Whereas now when I go to my studio every day and I work, I'm doing it. I'm doing it for myself primarily, and that doesn't feel selfish or like I don't mean to sound like I'm coming from like an ego perspective where it's all about me, but it gives me a way to kind of communicate, to understand myself better, and to communicate with whoever happens to be paying attention or whoever happens to be, seeing my work on Instagram. It's how I can express myself in a creative way, which, until quite recently in the grand scheme of things, I didn't even realize was important to me. It was like an undiscovered part of me that sort of slowly crept out. And then all of a sudden it was like, whammo, this is what I have to do. Like, this is what I want to do. And this is what I need to do.
That's amazing. What did it feel like to make that discovery?
It felt really liberating and exciting and terrifying all at the same time.
Yeah,
But you know what? I've noticed something about myself recently is that I actually quite like being scared. Like, not scared of like a bad guy or, something awful happening, but that feeling like you're standing on the edge of something and you just have to take that step off. And I like that.
Yeah.
I like that thrill of knowing you're challenging yourself and knowing that, the worst thing that could happen is that in that moment you don't have the success you want, but then you just pick yourself back up and you kind of keep going until you get there.
Yes. Yeah. It's so good because like that thrilling feeling of the fear is like you're on to something big. You're about to like expand beyond what you've known previously. And you've experienced that enough to know that that's what's coming with that feeling. So it's not a bad thing.
Yeah. And that it's like all learning, right? You're just learning stuff. Like, that's really all it's about, is just learning new things and learning how to respond and learning how to handle things and how to navigate. And that to me is kind of expanding your horizons. And that is what is, that's what keeps us all going and in our own ways and to different levels.
Oh my gosh, I love that topic so much. It's actually come up on another episode previously, and I was talking about the exact same thing, about how when I started my journey, I almost wanted to like eliminate that feeling of fear. I wanted to like overcome it once and for all type thing. And then I realized that it was a good thing, like you were talking about. And I was like, I kind of made the fear my friend, and I named her Fear Alicia, and was like really embracing her. And I came to the conclusion that I would really miss her if she was gone forever. So I don't feel like I need to eliminate that anymore. It's more just like learning how to like hang out with Fear Alicia, Right. And not letting your fear not letting Alicia or your fear get the best of you and stop you in your tracks. But it actually, like, if you come at it from the perspective of fear or nervousness or anxiety, whatever you want to kind of label it in the moment, as a motivator and as a momentum builder, as opposed to something to stop you, then it's a lot easier to kind of get around those what used to be obstacles, I would say.
Totally. Yeah. It's kind of like I've been using this mantra lately for myself that's like the feeling of discomfort is like a moment where I can find the comfort in the discomfort, because I know that it's an opportunity waiting for me to grow in some form.
Yeah.
I heard about this I was listening to Brene Brown has like I don't know if it's a new podcast, but it's something like related to like specifically leadership.
Yes.
I don't know if you guys have heard this one.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called. I wish I could remember.
Courage to lead or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Dare to lead.
Yeah.
Yes. And she talks about how like when you're a leader, you just have to get used to like uncomfortable things and uncomfortable conversations and not like, instead of avoiding it, like embracing it as like opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Brene Brown, I think I've had something up on my corkboard for a long time that was a picture of two circles, and one circle says your comfort zone. No, wait, how did it go? I'm going to scare it out.
Oh,
but basically,
like
the magic happens outside of your comfort zone, right?
It's so like your comfort zone's here, and you're like way over here.
Yeah, and that's where the magic is. And if you don't push yourself out of your comfort zone, just like me, you could go along having a perfectly great, happy, wonderful life, but there's maybe something more there. There's maybe
Yeah.
something underneath that you haven't
And that's
discovered
like,
yet.
that's great for some people. Some people are perfectly happy living like that, which is totally fine. But some people don't find the fulfillment that they're kind of searching for in that place.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank gosh we do when we do.
Yes, for sure. Was there like a kind of a turning point in where you discovered this kind of like this new purpose? Like, was there a specific event or something you learned or something you experienced that made you like kind of like turn on those the lights there?
Well, I would say in terms of creativity and sort of desire to be some kind of artist, I was not a particularly artsy kid. Like I wasn't always drawing or making or anything. But after I had kids, so in my early 30s, I would say, I started to have this creative desire after having kids. And like I'm not talking like making my own baby food and all that stuff. Although I did maybe a little bit, not as much as I should have. But I started taking like one-off, workshops or courses just because I was
Right.
interested in it, and it was a way to kind of like do something for myself outside of young kids
Right.
and my family. And that sort of started to turn the light on for me. And, for years, though, I was doing it very inconsistently, and I never really set anything up at home. I would just go to the workshops or the retreats or the, once a week lessons for a 10-week program or whatever. And I would do the creative exercises and stuff when I was there, but I would never translate it to having it a setup at home. And one of the last sort of, I did a 6-day workshop, which was broken into 3 days, 1 week, 3 days the next week. And I decided to try and do a complete painting every day so that I would have
Wow.
6 small paintings at the end of it. And I did Georgian Bay scenes. So it was rocks and water. And at the end of it, I had I had 5 paintings. I had to do one on my own, which was scary without like the instructor and the other people taking the class. But, and then where our cottage is, there's a community center and they have an art show every year. And I thought, I'll just put them in. Like, what have I got to lose, really? And that was one of those times where you're standing on the edge of that proverbial cliff.
Yes.
Because I'd never shown my work. I didn't really have a body of work. I had these 6 little paintings. I'm like, I'll just put them in. It's a totally safe environment. I know basically everyone in the community. Everyone will be supportive and kind and whatever. And I did it. And they all sold right away. And so that was like, oh my God, that was thrilling. Now, this is someone who, for most of my life, I've been kind of dependent on external validation. To help me feel like whatever it was I was doing was worthwhile or valuable or important. And so that kind of clicked me into, well, maybe I could do more of this. Like I could make more art and show it however. And that was kind of I would say that was a little bit of a turning point in that I put some work out there. It was well received. Now, mostly it was friends and family that bought them, but still.
Still.
And it was a start, right? You got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And so that was when I decided to kind of try to consistently have a practice and to make work that I would feel proud showing people and offering up for sale and just see what happened. And then it was just, you kind of have to make it up as you go along because I had no idea what I was doing. I'm not formally trained. I did not go to art school. But I asked a lot of questions. And then I got a studio space in an old historic building in downtown Collingwood, where I live about 10 minutes away. And there are 9 studios in here. And once I had a studio that I was paying rent on and I had somewhere to go and show up every day, then it really started to take off because I created the time and the physical and emotional space to do so.
Right.
I treated it like a job. I'd drop my kids off at school and I'd come here for the day and then I'd pick them up at the end of the day and we'd go home.
Right.
And so we were all where we were supposed to be. And, I couldn't be distracted by the refrigerator or laundry or household chores because I was key. At work. It was huge.
Gosh.
It was a huge turning point.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that too. Getting into a physical space helps with the headspace.
Yeah, and also there's 8 other artists in this building all the time.
Yes.
So
So
there's
that
people to
energy.
ask questions of and brainstorm, and we critique each other's work and brainstorm with each other
amazing.
all the time. Like, it's been a really wonderful experience. We
Wow.
travel together sometimes. We go
Oh,
on
that's so
painting
awesome.
trips, and yeah,
Wow.
it's been an amazing kind of community to be a part of.
That's great.
It is
Wow.
awesome. Something is coming to me that I have to ask. You are also someone who spends a lot of time learning and applying lessons of that relate to mindset, and the lesson of self-image comes up often. And I just have to ask, what did it do for your self-image to go from not having a studio to having the studio space and treating it like your job? Did you have to do the self-image work before that? Did you like do it as you went along, or did you not know anything about that stuff at that point, and it was kind of just like happening subconsciously?
I knew nothing about self-image work or mindset work at the time when I took my studio. I'm a bit of a leap before you thinker. And so I left and then figured it out as I went along.
Now that you
But
have the hindsight, do you remember anything relevant to that at all? Like while you were going through it, like stepping into your space for the first time and be like, "Fuck yeah, I'm an artist," or like,
in my mind, yeah. I still thought
Yeah.
I was a poser, but I was like, yeah, look at me. I've got a studio.
yes,
I sat here the day I remember it very distinctly when I moved in. And when I first moved in, I was sharing a studio space because I'm currently now I have the space on my own, but I was sharing it before. And it's the biggest studio in the building, and it's got beautiful light, and well, you guys have been here. It's a great space, and
It's gorgeous.
and I was sitting here with like 3 IKEA boxes of like little drawers and storage things or whatever, and I was so happy, and I had like my little Allen key set, and I was like, I just spent hours here like building my IKEA things, like so excited, then moving my art supplies into them, and I was like, it felt like I mean, it's a bit corny, but it sort of felt like a rebirth. I was like, okay, this is like my new
a new
home
self-image.
away from home, and this is me. Like, this is who I'm
Yeah.
going to be.
Yes.
You know? Yeah. I think having a proper studio, and I had a beautiful little studio space at home that was separate and had a door that I could close and everything, but it was right beside my husband's home office, and he talks on the phone all day, every day, and it would drive me crazy. Like, I needed these headphones back then, and then maybe I would have used my studio more often, but I never did anything in there. Except during COVID, I did. I moved back into it, and it was really productive, but I had never used it like that before because I didn't know what I was doing, and I think I needed to be surrounded by other people where there were less distractions, and it was all about making art. The energy of this building is all about making art, and that had a huge influence on me.
Oh yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Community is so important.
It's huge.
Especially when you're kind of like shifting into something new. Like, there's really nothing more valuable than like the firsthand, like almost like it's like the idea of like a mentorship, or like, somebody that's like doing it too.
Yeah.
Doing it next to you, or like showing you the way, or, there's so much value in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So how did that transition like stay smooth, or at any point did you like question what you were doing there and
Was your
second guess
tested at all?
Yeah. Or did it just
my faith has been tested over and over again, like anyone's, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's times for sure that staring at a blank panel, or even a partially painted piece of work, or blank piece of linen for rug hooking purposes, is terrifying. And it's almost like, because our ski season started late this year, and I'm a lifelong skier, and I was joking with people on the first day that it was open. I was like, do you guys get this feeling too, where you get off the chairlift and you're standing at the top and you kind of wonder if you remember how to do it? And everyone's like, yeah, I feel that too. And I feel that almost with painting and making work. Like, every time I put a new, like, ready to roll panel up on the wall that's blank, I'm like, shit, what if I don't know how to do it? But again, I kind of like that thrill of being on the edge of terror. And you just kind of have to start. Like, some of my strongest work has just been starting by putting paint on a thing and not being attached to what it looks like, but just getting
going
it going,
for it.
right? Like
Jumping
action demands more action. And
Totally.
once you start, then at least you're started. And starting often is the hardest part.
Yeah,
that-
exactly.
That's something that actually stuck with me from our consultation before we shot together, the term underpainting. And it's like, and the association to like removing a lot of the pressure from starting. You're like, I'll just paint it like teal or pink or something just to take the pressure off. And sometimes I like am in a situation in life, I'm like, what's the equivalent of the underpainting in this situation? Like,
Well, if you're a writer, they call it the shitty first draft, right? Like you just got to get words out on paper on your computer screen, and who cares what it looks like, sounds like, reads like, anything.
Something.
You just got to get it out because
Doesn't
you
have to
can
be
work
perfect.
with. It's easier to work with something than it is with nothing, I find.
totally.
Yeah.
Give
And it
yourself
can
a
be
starting point of some kind.
Yes. It can be so easy to just sit there and put it off and wait. But you're right. The hardest part is almost just like getting it out there.
Yeah.
Something to start with. So can you share with us a little bit about like your process? Like how does it work?
Where do you go from the underpainting?
From the
So
underpainting.
from the
Then what?
underpainting, it depends what I'm hoping to work on at the time. Like, I do some commissions, not a ton, but some commissions. So if I'm working on a commission, I obviously have reference photos, and then I've done some background research just to kind of inform my own thinking around whatever the piece is going to be about. If I'm just working on my own series or body of work, then I usually start with kind of a vague idea of what I would like to convey or what process I'd like to go through. Like, do I want it to be organic and evolving, or do I want it to look like something? Am I working with a specific palette? Is it going to be more traditional landscape or more abstracted? I would say over the last year, certainly since, I don't know why I time it with COVID, but it feels right to time it with COVID. I guess we're all marking everything in our lives against COVID. But I've been painting almost exclusively abstract work where I'm not using a visual reference at all.
Wow.
And I think for me, the reason why I started that was because I was trying to free myself up, and I was trying to just explore and experiment and see what would happen if I just left it up to whatever was going to come out and just kind of stood out in my own way and put paint on the panel. And I discovered that, by doing that, I really had to listen to myself. I had to get quiet, and I had to listen to what was going on inside me and how inside me was responding to the outside world. And whether that was what was actually going on in the outside world, or whether that was, going for a hike in our forest on our property. And I think because we were all living such contracted lives, more than ever, we had to really rely on what was just outside our doors or inside our doors, as the case may have been. So it sort of made me rethink how I wanted to approach my practice. And so I decided to use less reference material and just respond to whatever. And so what has come out over the last year mostly is abstract work. And I also have started rug hooking more regularly, and more pieces, big, small. And the way the rug hooking and that process of making, which is with yarn and strips of wool or silk or any fabric really. And then that sort of in concert with painting with brushes or palette knife or scrapers or whatever, like making marks either with textiles or paint. Even I've been surprised by how the process of each has informed and impacted each other. So like you can see, you guys, well, they can't see, whoever's listening to the podcast can't see, but the rug hooking has been a bit geometric, like it's more about shape and color and the way those shapes and colors kind of fit together on the piece of linen. but that's sort of how I've been approaching painting in a similar way, which is not how I approached it before. Before I was much more like, okay, where are the lights and the darks? And I was trying to represent something, even though it was always abstracted because I'm not a high realist painter. But you know, my inspiration has always been the same. It's always been the natural world and our natural landscape. And you know, if I had to pick 2 or 3 things, what I paint over and over and over again, even though they look totally different, are rocks, trees, water, and mountains or hills, basically. Or like even, you know, tree root systems on the ground or branch systems above, and those are the shapes and the lines that kind of inspire me and inform how I make marks on my own substrates.
So cool.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. It brings me to something that I've wanted to ask you about, which is, well, basically I've been following your journey for a while now. So I remember the like more representative stuff of the rocks and the water and stuff. And I've seen it kind of evolve into more abstract patterns and shapes and stuff. But the thing that I think is so cool is that you can see one piece or another piece and know that it's done by the same person. You have a very distinct style, despite like this evolution of the subject matter kind of in your paintings. And I wonder how that feels to, like, is that something that you're like connected to the idea of? Do you recognize that you have a style? Is that something that you receive externally from other people, like I am telling you right now? Or
yeah, I mean, I would agree. I do hear it from other people. I don't always see it myself, but I think that's kind of like, you know, how you don't necessarily think that you look like your mother or your father or whatever. Like it's hard to see yourself, but
you're too close to it.
Yeah, I'm too close to it. I mean, I think you're right. My style has evolved and changed, but it still feels like me. For sure. And that's one of the exciting things about being a maker. I mean, you guys know you're both super creative and make things that you can evolve, but still, like, as you evolve, you're growing as a person or a human, and your practice kind of stays aligned with that evolving, you know, that shrinking, expanding, growing, this direction, that direction, forwards, backwards, sideways, whatever. It's all me. Right. And it feels me. I mean, sure, there's some pieces I like more than others in terms of the end product or the end result, but I think that the process part is so important to us as makers that you know, the end result is sometimes not even really important.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny, like when you're kind of getting into like a new practice, whether it's painting or photography, or, you know, I've noticed this about myself too, like making films. When you're kind of starting out, you do a lot of things that feel safe because you're still getting comfortable and you're still gaining that confidence. Like you were saying, in the beginning, you were concerned about like the lighting and like making it look, even though it's not like realist, it's still got those aspects.
It has to kind of make sense, right?
When it has to make sense. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But eventually, you get to a point where you're so confident in what you're doing that it doesn't have to be safe anymore. It doesn't have to make sense, and it's because you become more connected with like yourself as an artist, I guess, and you're more confident in that you can just create and you don't have to worry about
take risks.
Those things. Yeah. Take risks and experiment, explore.
Yeah. Well, also because I'm, you know, I didn't go to art school. I don't even know what the rules are. So you know, it's easy to break them when you don't know what they are.
Totally. You know,
and you
that's
don't feel as
like,
bad.
that almost works in your favor, I'm sure, at times.
Sometimes I think it does. Sometimes I wish I knew more, but I mean, nowadays you can find out anything you need to. You can learn how to do anything on YouTube, basically.
Definitely. Yes. Yeah. That's how I learned how to make films. Like people have asked me, did you go to film school? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Self-taught.
Right. I mean, I would have loved, that's one regret I do have, is that I didn't go to art school. But it is what it is. And I'm not going to let that hold me up. And I'm also not going to let that make me feel like I'm not a real artist either.
Yeah, I will tell you too, though, a lot of people that went to art school aren't artists. Like they don't end up being artists.
True.
A lot of people don't. So
yeah, and a lot of people that went to art school probably regret going to art school and not doing something different, right? Like the grass is always a little bit greener.
Totally, yes. Can you expand a little bit on the um, the inspiration you get from like the elements of nature that you described, like the lines of trees and the water and the rocks? Like, what is it about those things that like just lights you up so much that you have to like have it come through so much in your work?
Sure. I think the most important thing I've learned as I've become an artist is to pay attention and to look and to notice and to be aware. And that goes for our physical surroundings as well as our, the thoughts in our heads and the patterns that we're a part of as people. And it once I started noticing things more, and I can't even remember who it was, but it was an art teacher I was taking a class with. I think it was in Georgian Bay, and it was a watercolors class. I think it was the first art class I ever actually took as an adult. And she said, we were like standing on a rock painting, and she said, if you'll notice, the bottom of all the clouds is darker than the rest of the clouds. And I was like, oh my God, she's right. And I like looked at the clouds every day for like weeks. And I was like, she's right. Every day the clouds always have a darker line basically at the bottom. I'm like, how could I be 30 whatever years old at the time and not have noticed that? And I remember her really saying to us that making art is mostly about noticing and taking notice and paying attention. And
Wow.
it's really that simple. And so, I'm outside a lot because we happen to live in a rural area, which helps. And I walk in our forest with our dog every day, or, we go on other hikes around. Sometimes we're in open fields, sometimes we're in forests, sometimes we're in like rock. We're right on Niagara Escarpment, so sometimes it's rocky, sometimes it's not. And like there's just so many shapes and colors and like communities and relationships and interconnections between all the elements of the natural world. And I have a real curiosity about all of that. And so it's awareness and curiosity, I should say. You have to be curious to be aware.
Mm-hmm.
And I take a lot of photos with my phone when I'm out and about, just like casual pictures or whatever. Like sometimes I'll take a picture of a bunch of tree roots and the way that they kind of overlap and overlay and interconnect and twist around. And, I might do a painting inspired by that isn't about tree roots, but is about lines and the way lines intersect or the way shapes intersect. So it can be, or it might actually be lines that look like tree roots. So it all kind of goes in the hopper. We had our mastermind. You guys know what our mastermind is. And so mastermind is a group of people who come together to kind of brainstorm and help and support each other, working through whatever they're working through, or just to support each other. But it's kind of, the idea is that as a collective, we are, how do you describe it? As a collective, it's almost like we can brainstorm anything, because we're not just an individual mind, but when we get part of a collective, then we kind of bounce off each other's energies and we absorb each other's energies. Anyway, so I had my mastermind call this morning, and we were talking about creating fertile soil, literally like to grow things, but also like creatively as makers. How do we fertilize our creative soil kind of thing? And I often use the analogy or the metaphor of the compost heap, right? That everything just goes in there, like everything, like whether it's a stick on the ground or the color of the sky or the shape of a rock or the way the moss is clinging to the rock in some areas and falling off in others or whatever. Like it all, like in my mind, I'm putting it all in my compost pile, and I know it's going to come out somewhere. I don't know how necessarily, but I just trust and I have faith that it all informs and it all influences. And then my job is to kind of get out of my own head enough that it can come out on the panel or paper or whatever I'm working on, and that my response to what I've seen and what I've experienced and what I know comes out in a way that sits well with me, and ideally, eventually with other people too, or hopefully with other people. But it's, you don't always know what inspires you in a moment, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that concept requires a lot of trust that you just have to be like open to collecting these observations or this information in whatever form, and that it will just come back in whatever form that it needs to, and having the openness to just like surrender to that.
Yeah. I like that, the way you say that, Kelsey, the collecting of experiences and moments and ideas and thoughts. And we're all just collecting in different ways and different things and different, the three of us went out for a walk. Like, we might come back, and if we debriefed after we were out for a walk in the forest, we might have totally different experiences of what inspired us, right? But that's what makes it so magical and so interesting.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's another thing, again, that like comes along with like experience and time as an artist, is that kind of openness to trust, because it can be so easy to overthink things. Like, you could be walking in the forest and thinking like, oh, that moss is so beautiful. Look at the roots of those trees. Like, I need to remember this. I need to remember this. I need to use this for my work. And then you're trying to go back and you're trying to remember it, but you end up just like overthinking it, when really you're just allow it to like collect naturally and know that it will come back if it needs to in another form through your
and
work.
I would say that I did used to be, like, when I first started making art, I was a bit panicked and desperate all the time to remember things that inspired me, like especially other artists' work. I'd go to an art fair or an art gallery or whatever, and I'd love, X, Y, and Z's work, and I'd be like, how am I going to achieve what I like about their work in my own work? Not copy them necessarily, although sometimes it is quite helpful to try and copy another artist's work to try and figure out how they achieve something. And I've done that before. I think we all have. And but I used to get a bit panicky, like, I won't remember this feeling about being in this place. How am I going to translate it into my art? But then, you're right, with experience and some time, you develop that, and it's not a blind faith, because it's a learned faith, right? You do develop that faith and trust that it will come back if it's meant to come back. And if it's lost, it's lost. But it's never really lost, because it's in there somewhere.
No.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you get to that point as an artist? Like, when do you, like, what needs to happen in order to like make the shift of panicky overthinking to kind of the calm and trusting approach?
A lot of talking myself off the ledge, I think.
Yeah.
But you know what, to be honest, a lot of that came through the mindset work, which is how we all met, through the mindset coaching program. And, because so much of that program is based on awareness and curiosity and self-image and stepping out of yourself to manifest things that you want to manifest and goals you want to set, and meeting those goals. And so a lot of that faith and confidence, I think, came from doing that work. And also it helps that, I've been very fortunate that my work has been so well received, and I've sold a lot of work, and I've had a lot of shows, and so that, that, as someone who's always been quite dependent on external validation, that helps a lot.
Yeah, I was going to
ask, but
actually.
I've had to learn. I've had to learn not to try to not rely on the external validation, because it's so volatile, and it's so tenuous at best, right? And also, I've learned through the mindset work that relying on external validation is not helpful in terms of developing yourself as a human, and as someone who wants to be able to go after these goals. And so I've had to kind of retrain and reprogram the way I would evaluate myself and what I was doing.
Wow.
Yeah,
against the external or against the internal. And the internal is the only thing that matters, right?
Yeah, it's
Totally.
such an interesting evolution, because at the beginning of the conversation we were talking about the external, the validation that you got from selling those small 6 pieces, and at that point it seemed like external validation was a really good thing because it kind of gave you this motivation to keep going or to see what you could do next or see if you could create more for to sell. And and there's been a huge evolution in that, and it's cool that your relationship with external validation has evolved as well from there.
Yeah. I mean, I'll let you in on a little secret that
Please.
my very first big stretch EC type goal was to be accepted by an internationally based, very prestigious residency program. And they only open their call every 2 years for they only give like 6 or 8 residencies a year, and they only open the call every 2 years. And I wanted it so bad because I wanted to go to it's in Fogo Island, and I wanted to go to that place to make art because I've been there several times, not as part of the residency, but in working towards that goal, and that was my goal for a long time before I changed it. When I came to realize that I was setting myself up for not disaster, but for disappointment because I had chosen a goal that was dependent on me making the goal or not making the goal was dependent on an external person's decision. Now I'm grateful for the goal because it made me stretch and it made me think and it made me expand my practice and it made me grow in many creative ways. But I didn't want that yes or no to define me. And so I changed my goal to something else. And in the meantime, after I changed my goal, they opened up a call. I applied for it. I put forward my best application that I could at the time. And I just last week got the very lovely rejection letter. And I was like, okay, oh well, move on.
Yeah.
Whereas
that's so
You
good.
2
don't need
years
it.
ago, I would have been devastated. I would have been like, what's the
Wow.
point? Let's pack it in. I'm not good
my
enough. I
gosh.
suck. Da, 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 da.
Oh my gosh.
And
That's such a huge realization.
it was huge. It was huge. And it also helped me learn how to make goals that were more measurable in a way that wasn't reliant on someone else saying whether they thought I was worthy of the goal. Right?
Yeah.
Can you give us any details about your current goal?
Yeah, so I actually don't have a current goal at the moment, but up until recently, my goal was to hit a certain target in terms of revenue and sales. Not because I was chasing the dollars, but because I knew that if I set a financial, and I have huge paradigms around finances and money. So
Who doesn't?
Exactly. So
Yeah.
if anyone can relate to that. So if I set a financial goal, which felt so uncomfortable and weird and superficial and selfish and all these things and greedy, then it would encourage me to find creative and different ways to try and reach that goal. And it did. And anyway, so I had that goal for, I don't know, a year and a bit. And it was to reach a certain amount in sales. And 3 weeks ago, I went into my, and I'd sort of not forgotten about it, but I was still plugging away, but I sort of let go of the number and the actual target itself. And about 3 weeks ago, I was on my artwork archive software, which tracks like all my work, when it was created, where I've showed it, who it's sold to. Yeah, it's really it's an amazing, it makes me feel super organized and professional, which is key. And I went into the income section because I was looking for information, whether I'd invoice someone for something. And there was the revenue number right in front of me, and it was over my goal.
Yes.
And so I passed my goal, and I didn't even realize it.
Yes.
Except
Oh my
when I found out by
gosh.
mistake, and I was like, holy shit, I reached my goal.
Yes. Oh my gosh, congratulations.
Thank
First of
you.
all, that's
Thank you.
amazing.
Yes.
So now I need a new goal. So I'm working on it.
I love that.
Yeah, no, that was huge. And I was like, okay, so I can do financial goals because it's not about the dollars. It's about the push and the motivation and the momentum and the,
And like what you learn and take away on the journey to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The thing with money goals is like it doesn't have to be about the money, but it is such a great way to measure something. It's
Yeah.
such a great tangible way of measuring something that can be hard to measure.
Yeah.
Like
Numbers
like
don't
art.
lie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, numbers don't
Yeah.
lie. And that was over the last year in which we've been living in a constant state of pandemic and doomsdayers and like I've never sold so much art in the last
Oh
year,
my gosh.
honestly.
So you're not only doing well and surviving, you're thriving in the pandemic.
Yeah, compared to how it was before, yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I love hearing that.
Yeah, no, I feel so blessed and fortunate that I was, it also had to do with our kids are older, so I didn't have to supervise homeschooling or online schooling. Like it was just, it sort of hit at a time in my own life and our family's life where I could really hunker down in my own art practice as well as be there for my kids. So it, timing wise for me, it hit a sweet spot. Like if that had happened years ago, I would have been just as under the heavy blankets as everyone else.
But you're not, and so it's worked out perfectly.
And it's inspiring as fuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you. But you're right. I still, even sharing it with you guys, I feel a bit guilty sometimes because, it's been such a creative, productive year for me. I'm so grateful and I'm so blessed, but I know it's been so hard for so many people. And I wrestle with that inside,
I think that being, I think that's a really common one these days, but I think the way that I've been trying to reframe it personally is around like what the world would be missing if I chose to spend my time under the duvet.
Yeah.
Or it's like
instead of
it's
getting
like,
up and creating.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And it's like you hear so much about, even like if we're talking about right now, like the past year, pandemic year, you hear so much, so often about the struggle that people are experiencing right now. And like, imagine if we just only heard about that and we didn't hear about anyone like experiencing success. Like seeing your expansion like over this past year has been so inspiring. And like, what would the world be without that kind of inspiration, especially in a time like this where there is a lot of struggle going on? Like you need that light.
Yeah, you're right. And and it's so easy to see the light we all see from other people, and it's hard to kind of accept that I may be providing my own light for others too. Like that feels weird to get your head around, whereas I take so much inspiration from other people who are doing incredible things right now, especially too.
Yeah, when it comes to art specifically too, like if we're spending a lot of time at home, it's really nice to have art around and
I know. I was just thinking that
introduce ways to make our spaces more and more enjoyable, and I think art is, like, in my opinion, number one way to do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
no, I agree. I totally agree. I've purchased a significant amount of art myself over the last year.
And I have March 11th marked on my calendar, which is
good.
because Kara's pre-sales start that day for her next collection.
Ooh.
That's been an exciting show to put together.
Tell us more.
So there's 5 of us, 5 Canadian women artists, all abstract artists, and all like on the surface you could say our styles are all similar. So the show's called Brushstrokes, and the curator has put together 5 of our work. We each have about 6, maybe 7 pieces in the show.
Nice.
And so there's a really robust, lovely offering of artwork, different sizes, different price points, and it's been exciting. I mean, so much of what you do as an artist and a maker is quiet and on your own. It's really nice to be able to share in like a community way together.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's been really great and very inspiring. Like we've been kind of pushing each other on and supporting and encouraging each other, and so it's nice to kind of feel like you're on a journey with some other people, even if it's a short-term thing.
Mm-hmm. Is it still more exciting for you to have someone that doesn't know you purchase your work than a friend or family, or is that
That's a great question.
That is such a great question. I know one of my biggest worries when I was in my poser phase of being an artist was that I would run out of friends and family to purchase my work, and then what would happen? And yes, it's very exciting when a total stranger takes interest, and then, ultimately if even when someone takes interest, it's so touching and lovely and thrilling. And if they, decide to make that investment and make a piece of my work part of their home and their collection, it's like over the moon exciting.
Oh my gosh,
And it's just, I mean, it's exciting when someone I know buys a piece too, because then that kind of deepens our already existing connection. But it helps with the like ever kind of nagging poser idea back there when strangers
right?
purchase, for sure.
It's so interesting how that
Yeah.
works. I can relate
Yeah.
to that too. Do you have a story or like a memory of, or like of a very memorable sale?
Well, recently, so I was part of a show with Joey Reynolds at Langdon Hall. It's still ongoing. And I had quite a big piece there, 4x5, which was called Sacred Space. And it
Are
was
you talking about 4 by 5 inches, Kara? Or are you
no,
talking...
4x5 feet. Sorry, it was a big one. For me, that's a big one.
Yeah, it is a big one. Yeah, that's why I
Yeah,
wanted to make
huge.
sure we specified feet.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And
It's okay.
and I love the piece, and it's very abstracted, but it's of a stump that's in our forest that I check in on and have a little chat with pretty much every day.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh.
and it hadn't sold, and I was like, why isn't that selling? I was like, I don't get it. It's such a good painting, and da 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 da. And then I started to get excited that I could hang it in my house if it didn't sell, right? Because I have one piece of art in our house that I've painted, because I've been fortunate that, almost everything I've made to date, almost everything has sold. So
Amazing.
I've got one thing I do want to actually look to going forward is to kind of keep one piece of each body of work I do as almost like a marker, keep it within our family and our household. But anyway, so I was getting excited about, and I was like picking where I was going to hang it and everything. And then I got a call from the gallery director at Langdon Hall, and she said, someone's really interested in the piece. But she's moving and she hasn't seen it in real life. She's only seen it online. And I said, well, I'd be happy to drive down there and get it to her. Like, I'm happy for it to go out on trial, or for a sleepover, as I called it. And
That's cute.
so anyways, we back and forth, and we organized, and the gallery director took it to this woman's house in Toronto. And I don't know, we gave her 3 days with it or something before she needed to make a decision. And in the meantime, the Art Gallery of Hamilton wanted that piece to bring into their art and sales program. So I was like, oh, God, of course, nothing happens with this painting for so long.
And now people are going to
two
fight over
things
it.
are happening. So I had to tell the Art Gallery of Hamilton, you just have to wait. It's out on trial, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so this woman finally got back to us, and she's like, I love it so much. I just sold my house. I'm moving to a new house, and this painting, like, I'm so, like, she was just so thrilled and so excited. And I didn't know her, and I don't know how she found me or my work, but it was just such a nice, like, from start to finish, it was such a nice connection and such a nice interaction, and she's really thrilled. And the other day I was hiking in our forest, and I took a picture of the stump all covered in snow, and I sent it to her, and I said, this, just so you know, this is what your
No
stump
way.
looks like today, and this is, this was the inspiration. And she was so grateful to see it in the winter. And anyway, so that it was just a nice story, because sometimes stuff sells and you don't really have much of a chance to interact with the buyer or the collector. And in that case, I felt like I got to, start building a relationship with her, which was great.
That's amazing. I never really thought about that, about how, like, you create this piece. It's like a part of you. It's so meaningful to you, and you ship it off, and sometimes you don't know where it's going. And
Yeah.
you imagine, you always wonder.
Yeah. No, and I thought when I first started selling, I thought that I would have a hard time letting go of the pieces. And surprisingly, I mean, there's been a couple pieces I wish I'd held on to, but for the most part, I'm just so happy, like, as an energy exchange, that, I'm able to put something out into the world. Feels good to me. And that, that I don't have stacks of painted panels leaning against my walls. It's so nice to get work out into the world.
Yeah.
It feels like the right thing to do for whatever reason.
Does it happen often? I mean, not maybe during COVID, but where you go visit friends or family and you see a piece of yours hanging and you get to like see where it's living? What's that
Yeah,
like?
yeah. Also, yes, it's it's cool, but I'm also have found discovered about myself. I'm quite critical, like in like
You're
post
like, oh, you're going to
work.
put it in that corner? It
No,
doesn't get
no,
any
I'm
light in that
critical. No,
corner.
I'm critical of the work. I'm like, oh my God, that looks unfinished, or why did I do that, or I should have done this, or
Oh
But
my
I
gosh.
don't. It's not so much being critical. It's just like looking at past work through a more experienced eye, I guess, right? Like as a learning,
Yes,
tool,
totally.
as a learning
Yeah,
tool.
we've talked about, Shannon and I have talked about this before, almost jokingly, but we talk about like our past work and how when we look at it now, we try to feel compassion for our old
Yes.
creative selves, that we're just trying something new and learning and putting ourselves out there. And
Yeah.
instead of feeling critical, it's like, wow, look at you, trying this, and you're doing
Yeah.
what you can with what you have right
At
now.
the time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And almost
Exactly. It's
being
all a
like,
process.
thank you for teaching me what whatever the piece is, taught me, right? And
Yes.
how you supported me and got me to the next stop on the journey.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's so
and at the end of the
nice.
day, someone used their hard-earned money to buy it and put it up on their wall where
And
they could
that's
see it and walk by it
huge.
every single day, or
And what a
it's
compliment. Like
Yes.
that is, it's the ultimate. It's the
Huge.
ultimate.
such a nice
Yeah.
feeling. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what are you working on these days? It's been a while since we've talked to you, and it's been so
Yeah.
nice to just see your evolution happen from afar. But what are you working on these days? What do we have to look forward to?
That's a good question. So I've just put together the work for this online show that opens later this week. So I'm at a bit of a starting gate again. And I have a couple of like little group shows here and there, but I don't have a big project in the works at the moment, which is sort of not deflating, but it's a bit discouraging, but also really exciting at the same time, because it kind of means that, well, what do I want to do? What do I want to be involved in? And then there's an opportunity to really think about it and then to start working towards it. So I don't know, to be honest. I've got a few commissions which I need to get going on, which is always great. And then I think I'm waiting to be able to travel somewhere, which sounds ridiculous.
Oh my
But
gosh, no.
I'm supposed to do a residency in Newfoundland, just outside of St. John's, a place called Pooch Cove, and I'm supposed to do a month-long residency that was supposed to be last spring, but now has been moved to this fall. So hopefully that'll happen. And if that's the case, then I don't need to worry about what's next, because that will become evident as it unfolds. But if that's not the case, then I better start thinking of some other options to get my brain and my creative juices flowing. But I'm not worried. It'll come. Faith.
There's
That's
that trust
amazing.
and that confidence from the experienced artist.
Yeah, yeah. And I would say that over the last couple of months, like I've been really great and inspired and motivated until the last couple of months, where I've really slowed down. But I'm reading this book called Wintering. Have you guys heard of it?
No.
Anyways, it's all about how basically our bodies and our minds and everything needs to rest during the winter, because
Oh.
that is what winter is all about.
Right.
So now
Right.
my excuse for everything is I'm wintering. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm wintering. I'm taking it slow.
Oh, I love that. Kind of
it's-
embracing that slope point
Yeah.
instead of feeling panicked or
Yeah.
focusing on lack or anything
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I feel like I've had such a productive year in terms of work produced, but also, shows and exhibitions. And we've all had to, realign and readjust our schedules and agendas and priorities and everything. And
You deserve to winter.
Yeah. So I do. I do.
We all
I'm
do.
I'm in a slowed down mode, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
It's
great.
totally
I've
okay.
been doing lots of like cross country skiing and snowshoeing and lots of
Yeah.
fun outdoor activities.
Amazing.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
It's so
I
good
have-
that you don't feel like you have to be busy, because generally that
Yes.
feeling comes from like worry or stems from worry and
Stress. Yeah.
That's so good. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I work really well with a deadline. I don't work so well with pressure. You know, there's a difference.
Yeah.
There is a
Time
difference.
pressure I'm okay with, but like random, like unnecessary external or internal pressure, not so good for creativity.
Very good awareness to have as
Not
an
at all.
artist.
Yes.
I will say, if I can say one more thing that you might want
course.
to edit in, is that when
Yeah.
when I made the decision to work with you guys, with Found Her, that was also a turning point of sorts, because never in a million years would I have ever thought that I would do something like that. And I didn't really know what it meant. And
What
it
does
was
something like that mean to you?
like something like who makes a movie about themselves or a film? Like who does that? Why would I need to do that, right? But I knew in my heart, and it was a big investment, and it meant that I had to like really think about what was important to me, because I didn't want to waste your time, I didn't want to waste my time, I didn't want to waste my money. Like I had to come up with some content that was good, you know, that I felt was true. But I knew from the beginning, like when I first heard you talk about it, when we first had that discovery call, I knew from the beginning that it was a process that was going to be really good for me, because it was going to make me stand on the edge of that thrilling crevasse of fear. And,
Yes.
and, you know, put myself out there even more in a new way, and in what felt like a really scary, deeper way. And I couldn't be more thrilled with how it all went and what you came up with as products. And it was a turning point, because it allowed me to step further into who I want to be and how I want to be seen and how you want to show up in this world. And so for that, I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity to work with you guys, and I look forward to the next time that we get to do something.
Oh, thanks so
Oh
much for
my
expressing
gosh.
that.
You're
saying
welcome.
all that.
Yes. That is
No, it's like
the most lovely feedback.
but it's like, you know, we're all part of this collective experience, and when we move forward, if we can move forward with other people and bring each other along and support each other, it just makes it all the more magical.
It
and
really
special.
does. It really does. It's like,
This
it's
is why-
almost... Oh, go ahead, Kelsey, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, this is why we really love working with artists, because you tend to see it that way. You see it as like a collaboration of like a coming together to work together on a project, you know, as opposed to like hiring someone to like do a service for you. Not that our other clients look at it that way, but artists in particular, like they kind of feed off each other, I guess.
There's kind of like an unspoken appreciation that is mutual for the process of what we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like a freeness or something to it.
Yeah. And, you know, but I know in my heart of hearts that even if I'd said to you, okay, just come up with some content or whatever, and it wasn't, even if someone hired you just to provide this service, you would still do an amazing job. But for me to be part of that kind of collaboration and to feed off each other, just, you know, it's just, I mean, I think everything is about, to some degree, connection and community and you know, supporting each other. And it was just, you know, what you guys do with Found Her is just such a wonderful example of that. So thank you for putting what you put into the world.
Aw.
You're welcome.
Thank you for saying that. That means so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
It's great to hear. Yeah. Kara, thank you so much for sharing what you shared today. I have no doubt that it will resonate with all the right people that need to hear whatever it was they needed to hear from what you shared. And maybe you can just let people know where they can find you if they're not familiar with you and they want to follow along with what you're doing.
Sure. I can be found. My website is www.caramacintosh.com.
Nice and simple.
Yeah, I'm on it, and Macintosh is MCINTOSH, and I am on Instagram at Cara Macintosh Studio, and that's it.
Awesome.
Those are the two places I am.
Perfect.
Those are good places to be.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kara. We look forward to continuing to watch your journey unfold as as it has.
Absolutely. And look forward to collaborating again one day in the future, near future, hopefully.
Sure.
Me too.
For sure.
And thank you for being part of my journey and inviting me to be a part of your podcast journey too. It's been great. Thank you so much.
It's been fun. Thanks. And thanks for listening. So many thank yous.
Yeah. So much gratitude.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
And thank you for the beautiful sunny day today. In the middle of March.
welcome.
This is so welcome, right?
All right. Well,
See you all soon.
yeah. See y'all soon.